We really appreciate the closed captioning.
Great. They call it transcription. That's why I couldn't find it because I was okay. Yeah. Okay then. So is that the agenda was revised, and I just want to see if there's any revisions to the revisions.
I'm not going to need nearly all that time because unfortunately we didn't get feedback from a lot of the people on the start, stop, continue. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I just don't have enough input. I'll share what I can. It'll probably take about 5 minutes.
Okay. And my thinking is that we can refer stuff to committees also. Okie dokie. Are there any announcements?
Just that there's a middle housing meeting at 7:30. I think everybody probably knows about it, but there is a meeting at 7:30 in the city council.
Yeah, that's where Dan is tonight too.
Claire, I
Is
have
that
an
why-
announcement.
Yeah.
Excuse me, didn't mean to interrupt. We heard from Councillor Surratt over the weekend that the city of Eugene does intend to have a work session on noise pollution from Zippo Laminator. So that's going to be happening May 23rd at 5:30.
Great.
Hey. Yeah, we'll put that out. Carly, can you send me a little paragraph on that for the newsletter?
I'd be pleased to.
Great. Okay. Do you want to take a few minutes to talk about the games, Misty? I know you don't have to give the whole report, but I guess my question is there anything we're supposed to be doing?
No, just no, not really.
Okay.
Information on what's going to happen and what to expect, but as far as like what we're supposed to be doing, there's opportunities to reach out to businesses, and like there is a website I can drop in the chat. We should put in the newsletter for businesses if they want to reach out to Travel
Okay.
Lane County.
Let's talk about it when we talk about the agenda for the general meeting also. But okay. Any other announcements? All right, then we move along. The consent calendar. What we have is a motion to revise the agenda to move items to May. And so is that affirmed by board members present that we're good with that?
Can I ask a quick question, Claire?
Sure.
Are we able to vote because we only have such a small number of people on the here today?
We have 5 out of 9, which is more than half.
Okay.
I mean, that's one reason why we put like bigger decisions that we didn't know if there might be more breadth of opinions later. Okay. Okay, Joshua, Charlesie, can you post the agenda for Joshua? I can't do that and also look at my agenda and also chair.
Okay, I'll try my best. I have to find it.
Oh, let me just give you a co-host permission.
I'll send it to you, Josh. I've got it. I'll send it.
Okay, he wanted it to be posted, but that's okay. Okay, so then the other decision that we made at the not decision that we made at the retreat that we need to decide in an open meeting is that we want to meet quarterly in a closed executive session in which there are no decisions made, but we review goals and status and discuss process issues. So so that's okay. I'm just going to say the motions and then we approve or not the whole calendar. Okay. That the minutes for general meetings can be approved by the board per the charter. That we are reconvening the charter review committee with John, Charlesie, Stan, and Stefan, and that we want to record the votes in board meeting votes as with a roll call so that they can be accurately recorded in the minutes. So do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Charles, I see your hand. Were you?
Well,
Mike-
I'm sorry, I was distracted, but did you mention that the votes at the meeting will be done by roll call?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay, all in favor of the consent calendar? And if you will, okay, we're going to do this by roll call. Misty? Carly? Me? Yes. Susan?
Yes.
Charlesy?
Yes.
Okay. So all those present unanimously confirm the consent calendar. All right then. Review last general meeting. Thoughts about the last general meeting? Open discussion.
I just would say I thought that the conversation was good. I was glad that we brought in both outside guests. I was a little surprised afterwards to see that the notes of the meeting had been taken and then published. The news station, I do understand. I followed up with John and understand how they may have gotten that information. But I thought it was a good conversation. The only thing that concerned me was the conversation around the trees, and that there was a lack of clarity around the tree impact. That it still seems to be some significant confusion around that.
Yes, and yeah, I think that is definitely an open discussion. Any other comments about the meeting? The Social Justice Committee was glad to finally get a program on the agenda. We were a little bit disappointed in, the amount of time taken by the student voices recordings rather than having more discussion. We would have preferred that, and so we'll try again sometime. Anything else?
I know that some people were, I think, a little concerned about some of the tone of the chat conversation. Just mentioning that.
Yeah, I don't look at the chat when I'm chairing a meeting, and I haven't reviewed it since then. Was there any other people who wanted to discuss that?
What
I
was the-
noticed, I did notice as well. I'm sorry, Misty, I didn't mean to step on you. I apologize. I noticed as well. I did notice at one point, there was feedback that showed up from RRCO. So I don't know, Claire, if that was you. One thing I do think that we've got to be careful is if you are heading and then put in a feedback, is it your feedback or is it RRCO, the board representation feedback? So that's the only other thing I noticed on the chat.
Good call. Thank you. I don't know if it was me either. Probably. Okay. One of the kind of underlying questions about the last agenda was a kind of push to have social issues on the agenda rather than just infrastructure, housing, and transportation issues. I'm wondering if you all have thoughts about that balance.
I do.
Misty?
I would like, I know all of those subjects can be heated and passionate subjects, but since social justice subjects, we haven't really brought to the table all that often historically, that perhaps we can give more time for discussion. I know that we kind of pack things in because we feel like we have to, but next time when we are have a special guests come in out of, take their time, and it's uncomfortable talking about these issues, and we should, I don't know, just out of respect for the subject, allow for a decent dive into the layers, because it takes a little while to even get to a place of learning and comfort and vulnerability.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Misty. Okay, shall we move on to the next item? Okay, at the retreat, we created a roster for the officers, mostly through volunteer. And what we have on the roster right now on the slate is John and I will continue as co-chair. Carly would be the treasurer, Stefan would be the secretary. And so, and also Charlie is serving as a secondary secretary, but I guess that's not a formal thing. So do we want to does anybody have a motion about our slate? Someone other than me has to move to approve that slate.
Oh, I'll move to approve it.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, so let's have a roll call. I'm in favor. Susan?
I'm in favor.
Charles
Carly?
is in favor. I'm sorry.
Charles, Carly, okay.
I'm a
And
yes.
Misty?
I'm in favor.
Okay, congratulations, y'all. Another point that maybe we'll talk about next time when John is here is our representative at the Neighborhood Leaders Council. If John should continue, which he's volunteered to do, and whether or not we need an alternate. So I propose that we discuss that next time. Okay. And the other piece of the officers is that Dan has volunteered to be a parliamentarian, which is someone who watches process and intervenes with process questions as needed. That's not a formal officer of our board, but we could confirm him to do that next time as well. Okie dokie. So Susan, we have
Alright.
a to-do list. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so if I can share my screen, can you enable me
Sure.
to share screen, please?
I can.
That
Let's
would
see,
be
where are you? There
awesome.
you are. Make co-host. There you go.
Okay. So share screen. All right, can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
RRCO Board Capacity Planning. Awesome, thank you. So basically what we did was we had a brain dump of asking everyone to think about the things that we as a board need to start doing, that we need to stop doing, and that we need to continue doing, because there's been a lot that's gone on over the past year. There's been a lot that has been happening with COVID and with some of the chaos that has happened. So we felt that it would be a good opportunity for us to take a step back, take a look at things, and try to categorize those to start building out our prioritization list. And I think that that having a prioritization and a set of objectives for the board over the course of this season that we are serving is going to be critical, and that this will ultimately get us there. Now, unfortunately, what we had done was I created a list of, and I posted it up on the share. We got feedback from 4 folks, all of which are here. So thank you. But unfortunately, we don't have the feedback from a number. So what I would share is a couple things. The board members that were asked to submit, and I think the feedback we heard as a whole across the retreat itself was that there needs to be a better mechanism for addressing stressful situations across the community and the board, as well as ways to ensure ample notice for meetings, for pre-readings. What the board suggested was the development of a system for project management. There are a couple other ideas, but in general, like communication and organization was a big theme. The other one was marketing, recruitment, and outreach. As Claire and I were chatting, you know, I'm like, it's marketing, and she's like, it's outreach, and we're like, it's recruitment. It's all the same thing. It's getting our story out there. So when you look at the start, stop, continue list, which I do have, and I'll share in a moment, you'll see a lot of things around getting feedback from our community, doing more canvassing, doing more updates to the website, thinking maybe a little bit differently about the newsletters and ways we can enhance that, starting social media, all of those types of things. Those were very popular. And when we had the individuals go up onto the share and put in from the entire list, the top 5 things, we did see these bubble up to the top. Again, that's only 4 of 9, so I don't feel we can make decisions yet, but I do think that this is a good move in the right direction. What we did, the start list was unfortunately the biggest list of all. And as you all may recall at the board meeting, I'm pretty passionate that you can't have a bunch of starts if you're not going to also have a stop. You got to be able to take something off your list, not just put more on, unless we're going to have more people sign up to help and engage. So what we tried to do, and Claire, thank you for your help on this, we tried to basically take the start list and say, okay, there's a bunch of administrative things that we've got on our start list that are great ideas. However, they're one time, such as minutes approval. I'm sorry, did somebody have a question?
No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I thought I heard somebody. So these on the far left side, like minutes process review and approval. I think what we just did was real great. It was quick. Is that the process that we want to go through, like deciding on what that core process will be? Meeting topic diversification, again, the topic we just had, how do we want to think about meetings and make sure we have good calendar rotation? Claire's already started bringing that idea into the discussion. Hybrid meetings, I think we've decided we want to have hybrid at some point, but we have not yet decided how. That's a one-time thing. Roll call voting decision is done. So you can see all these things on the far left side. Once we make a decision to do them, they're done. It's a one-time shot. When we really start getting into the meat of the starts is when you start looking at the committee items. What are things that we identified as an organization, as a group of members of the team that could be things that we should be adding to our activities as a whole? Peer and community training was one that was listed. Marketing, as I mentioned, and that covered everything from social media to canvassing, etc. Driving more awareness of the neighborhood plan, doing more readouts by committee at the board meetings and at the general meetings, doing more Spanish language outreach. For example, maybe having our newsletter in Spanish in addition to in English, but instead of taking a lot of space on the newsletter and duplicating it, maybe you put out the newsletter in English and then you have at the bottom, interested in reading the newsletter in Spanish, click here and go to the link on the website. And then we can have everything in Spanish on the website. There are ways that we can do all of these things, but the things in these start committee items, they're things that will require a committee. They're not something that can be done by an individual on this team. It does require a group. And we need to be thoughtful about the number of committees we have today and the number of committees we want to create, because we have a limited pool of people today that are participating and actively engaging and volunteering with their time. We don't want to burn them out. We need to grow more. So as we are thinking about this list, and as I encourage everyone who has not yet submitted your feedback on this list, I encourage you to look at that with that in mind, recognizing that as we are creating these things, we might need to think about the timing. For example, marketing might need to be our #1 focus in these next 6 months, so we can get the information and get people engaged in the process with us to join committees and help us do the work. Again, that's just a thought, not necessarily a recommendation. On the right-hand side, I'm again relatively new. I'm not familiar enough with all of the components of the individual committees. I tried to put when I thought that there would be a committee that could do that work. But if there is not a committee already identified and we would have to create a committee, again, that should come in to our decision making once we start to narrow this down, this list down of starts to something more manageable to build our vision and objectives for the team for this calendar year. Any questions on the start list?
I have a comment about committees, but
Fire away, fire away.
What? Oh,
Go ahead.
Okay, so I hope you saw that I painstakingly and hours of work of listing out all of our committees and who is currently on in the
did.
background docs. So, so that's an important conversation, as you're pointing out, because I think we can assign some of these to existing committees. Some of those committees need to be either dropped or reformulated or something. So I think that committee revision is an important start, or we call it terminating, sunsetting inactive tasks. There we go. So that's an important task soon. Neighborhood plan awareness. I don't think we need a separate committee for that. There's an action committee for the neighborhood plan.
Right,
But I
and
think the
that's what I meant
board
on that
needs
one,
to
sorry.
take some responsibility for doing that. We're going to do it. The marketing and outreach, and I think that we might need 2 committees for that, or we might need a big committee with 2 subgroups or something. So that just deserves more attention. That's it for right now. Oh, one other thing, I'm sorry. I'm really looking forward to having a electronic project management system. What has been happening is John keeps this running list of to-do list after each meeting, and as a result of his conversations with folks through the month, but he sees it as his list and his to-dos. So that's a limitation for us as a board, and if we had a group one, that would be much stronger.
Jackie did say that she's been doing some research on a couple and that she was going to be able to deliver some suggestions next meeting.
So let's put that on the agenda for next meeting.
Awesome. All right, going to the stops and the continues. I think that we at the offsite had a really good conversation around communication, stress, and timelines and such. And I think that already I'm seeing just that difference. The one thing that we need to get clarity on is there was a discussion around stopping the Iris Place committee. Unfortunately, John isn't here, but I think he was going to reach out to the Iris Place and the team.
Pat is here.
Yeah,
He's the lead of it.
Right. So I think the question was, do we still need to have the full Iris Place committee in place now that it's established, et cetera? Or do we need to just have a person assigned to the Iris Place to talk? Carlene, did you want to answer?
Okay.
John, Elizabeth, can't think of her last name, but Elizabeth is the manager of Iris Place, and she reached out to John and wants to set up a meeting with, I guess, John and Claire at least, and probably the committee to talk about RRCO and let them know what we're about, and let the neighbors know about the neighborhood association and so forth. That meeting hasn't been set up yet, but I plan to follow up with John when he gets back, but so I think it's in the works.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just add that I think you should be leading in that meeting, Pat, and that we need to talk as an organization. We had at one point talked about wanting to be involved in the programs being offered through that facility and have a much more interactive relationship with the residents there. So we have to maybe probe what possibilities there are in that direction.
Correct.
Misty, did you have a question?
Oh, I'm just a little bit confused. I thought we were going to possibly not get rid of the Iris Place committee, but have it absolve, like.
I didn't say we were getting rid of it. I said that John was trying to find out the information as to whether or not we were required to continue to have it or not. And that was the only thing I knew. And Pat responded that we're trying to pull together a meeting.
Okay. I just wanted to, it just sounded like we were talking about getting rid of it. And so I just wanted to clarify that.
That was the discussion at the board meeting. Was the question was, do we need to have it anymore? Because now that it's built and it's in place, and then that was the follow-up was that John was going to follow up.
Mm-hmm.
The other possible way to work with it is that it turn into a good neighbor agreement committee for whatever development goes up.
That's where I was going with my comment. Yeah, that it was going to be, yeah, included
So-
in another committee.
That's another conversation, I think.
Claire,
Yeah,
are there any people waiting to join this meeting?
I have not gotten any
All right.
notifications. No,
So,
we don't
again-
have a waiting room right now.
so I don't have any more to share. Again, unfortunately, we've only had 4 people respond on the start, stop, and continue to get their feedback. I'll send a personal note to the folks that have not yet responded and ask them to please fill it in. And then I can send an email around. So maybe we can have some conversation in email to continue to move things forward and not wait another month.
Yeah, I think there are more items than what we brainstormed at that meeting is the other piece.
Sure there are.
So I don't know, maybe we can talk offline about how to integrate all of that information management.
Susan, you had, maybe I didn't go to the right document, but were a couple of people who wanted to look at doing recycling in the community. I don't see that here.
That was in the start. Think it's here because I'm one of the people that wanted to do it. So trust me, it's
Right.
here. I
Right,
just, maybe I missed it on here.
right.
I'll check and make sure if it's on my list, but
Okay,
it's on, it's here. It's definitely on the discussion.
Okay.
It could go into the Green and Resilient Committee.
So that's it on my end. That's moving.
So what I want to record, however, is what's next on this. You just said we're going to follow up with email.
I'm going to follow up with email with the individuals that have not yet submitted their feedback. Once they give their feedback, I will then summarize the feedback into buckets, and we can try to have some conversations via email to keep us moving forward so we don't wait until mid-May to make some decisions.
Okay. Any other discussion on this item? And Pat, will you put your hand down unless you want to say something more? Okay. Zooming right along. At the meeting, we talked about having a standard opening statement at the beginning of beginning of meetings. And in the background notes for the meeting today, I made some suggestions about about motions regarding that. So I want somebody, I'm not supposed to make motions, but if someone can look at that and see if those are motions you would like to make. Let's see where it is. Okay, it's the top of the page. It says 9 draft opening statements. Of course, the pages aren't numbered. So the first motion would be if the RRCO will adopt an opening statement for general meetings.
I move that we make an opening statement for our meetings.
Okay,
Second.
anybody?
A second.
Okay, so we have a roll call on that. Carly? Yes. Misty?
Yes.
Charlesy?
Yes,
Susan?
Yes.
Claire, yes, okay. That statement will include our mission. Whatever it might be.
Yeah, we don't have one, so I don't feel comfortable and making a statement that we should include something we haven't created yet.
Okay. Any other comments on that?
I would like a land acknowledgement to be included.
Wait, let's get there. Okay, we're talking about mission statement first. Okay, I think that if at least one person doesn't agree, then we shouldn't vote on it here.
I would agree that we should state a mission statement in our, but yeah, I'm
But
pretty
okay.
hard in the vacuum.
Whatever
okay.
our mission statement is our mission statement. I mean,
Well, actually, one of the things we wanted to do today is refer the vision statement drafting to some committee, which is not formed. But, and I did put our current mission statements, for which there are 2 versions, in the background notes, if you want to look at those. But I guess I would like to suggest that we refer that crafting, that wordsmithing for a draft to a subset of people to do that and to bring it back to the board.
Because ultimately it would need to be in our revised charter.
Yeah, Missy,
that group, so.
what did you say?
Are we forming groups right now? Are you looking for people to volunteer to be a part of that group, or? Are we
Let's
still?
come back. Let's put a pin in that and come back to it.
Okay,
Okay. So the statement will include a land acknowledgement. Comments on that?
Make a motion statement, include a land acknowledgement.
Okay. Anybody else? I just want to say that land acknowledgement is controversial from the Native community, because a lot of them are what they call performative. You know, it's like, let's show how woke we are kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that there are a lot of really great suggestions about how to do a land acknowledgement that is more authentic and less performative. So I think we should do a land acknowledgement, and that there should be some thought that goes into what that should be part. And again, that needs to go somewhere to draft.
absolutely.
Okay. So do we have a motion to include the land acknowledgement? Did you already move that, Misty?
I think so.
Okay. So a vote on the land acknowledgement. Charlesy,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Carly,
Yes.
Misty, me, yes. Okay. The statement will include expectations for discussion, and John got this sample here from West Side Neighbors that we could either, use as a jumping off space. This meeting is intended to be a place for the respectful and civil exchange of ideas and information. We ask all in our attendance to honor this ethic by keeping questions and comments civil, concise, and without commentary of a personal nature. And then there's another thing about chat. So first, just in general, do we have a motion about including expectations in the opening statement?
I make a motion, we include expectations in the opening statement.
Okay, let's do a vote on that. Charlesy,
Yes.
Carly,
Agreed.
Misty,
Agree.
Susan motion, and me, yes. What? You have your hand up, Misty?
No, sorry.
Okay. So all of the opening statement stuff needs to be drafted. And that includes something for the mission, at least in an interim period, includes the land acknowledgement. So do we want to form a committee to do that? Do we want to, we could appoint people who aren't here to be on that committee also.
Well, perhaps the same people that are drafting the mission statement can also work on the land acknowledgement.
Well, I was thinking the same committee can do the whole
thing.
opening statement. all
Right,
of
right.
it. Yeah.
Yes, well, I want to be a part of that. so.
Okay, any other volunteers?
I'll volunteer.
Great. So why didn't you guys go ahead and schedule a meeting and put out an invitation to the rest of the board. So if other people want to step in, they can. Does that sound okay?
Sounds great.
Great.
And Claire, for clarification, that committee that we're talking about right now is the committee to come up with the opening statement,
Yes.
all parts of it. Okay.
Yes. Great. A related issue is John and I go around and around on this. You know, we have this thing about you can make announcements at the beginning of the meeting. And I keep feeling like we should clarify that announcements are not the same as public commentary. In other public meetings, like the city council and the commissioners meeting, people get however many minutes to give an editorial opinion statement. And I'm not comfortable with that in these meetings. And it got really sticky with Harry. So we don't have a policy about that. And John's thing is, how can you determine what's an announcement and what's an opinion? And my feeling is, you know it when you see it. But I guess that's not clear and objective enough for the planning head. We don't need to make a decision here, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are. No thoughts.
Oh, this is Susan. I mean, I think that, you know, there's an opinion and then there's something that you can take action on. And so announcements need to be actionable items. There needs to be an event, a thing, something you can actively do. That's an announcement. Otherwise, it's an opinion.
That was my take too.
Yes,
Great
that was
minds.
what I was gonna say too.
I agree
So-
with that.
So if that's how we define it, do we want to say announcements only, no opinions? Because related to that, I think, is an issue that we have, which is how do people get their opinions out? How, you know, I think we have to create more vehicles for people to talk to the board and access the general membership for discussion about things. So that's something to think about more deeply, I think.
Well, perhaps we could, you know, have 5 minutes for public comment. I don't know. You get a minute to voice a concern about what's happening in the community. And a lot of people, if we say, well, email us, well, a lot of people don't have computers or an internet or whatever. So, you know, perhaps the only time they ever get to voice their concern is by showing up to the meeting. I don't know.
Carlene and Pat, I wonder if you have a thought about this, and Joshua, just to break from our usual routine here.
It seems to me that announcements are about events that are going to happen, like a fundraiser or a work day in the park or something that, as Susan said, is actionable. It might get a bit sticky, you know, if we tell people they can't comment on editorial stuff in terms of free speech, but if you're going to limit it to time, they aren't going to have a lot of time anyway.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
John's point.
I think time limitations are important. I mean, Pat and I were the big offenders in offering our opinion on things, but it seemed to be a necessary intervention at the time. I don't know, if there's maybe time at the end then as a forum, let people, you know, if there's 5 minutes left at the end, why, are there any additional commentary?
That's true. We could have a public forum time after the meeting, official meeting is done. Somebody on the board has to volunteer to be there for it, but okay, well, that's just something to think about.
Yeah, one comment I would say about that is that more often than not, we get to the end of these meetings and the chairs want to leave.
Everybody's
And-
burnt out.
And I think that would not serve well, even
Yeah.
though, you know, and I do think people should have a chance to comment with a time limit. And I do think it's helpful to discuss or point out the difference between an announcement and an opinion. So,
Okay, great. Well, maybe that can be written into the statement, but good thinking, folks. Thank you. June newsletter. I think Susan has been taking some initiative.
And
Oh, I'm sorry, Joshua.
Oh, I was just going to say really quick, since you had invited that, yeah, it does seem like limiting it to more actionable items would be fair, especially if there was a section, like a soapbox kind of a section or whatever, that at some way that people could speak out to folks if they really wanted to in a way that maybe was, yeah, positioned in the meeting so that it wouldn't be super disruptive. But also, you know, potentially there could be some kind of online forum or thing that could be looked at that might even, you know, be possible to help with that too.
Yeah, good. Susan?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in on that, Josh. I like that idea a lot. And maybe what we could do, I popped it in the window, was maybe we take one meeting a quarter and we say, this is the public feedback session. And, you know, we're going to assign 30 minutes. And if you want it, go sign up on the website. You can have, you know, 3 minutes if you sign up. And if you want to take a risk and you only don't sign up, you get 1 minute.
Yeah, an open
Do
mic.
something like
Yeah.
that. I think that would enable us to get feedback from folks. It would also highlight awareness of the website, which is something that Charles and I were talking a little bit about. You know, we want to see what we can do to try to get more people to go there, and the more links we can put and the more actions that people can take on the site, the better.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Somebody else have their hand up also? Oh, okay.
Pat is.
Oh, I was going to say, that reminds me of what Susan just said. It reminds me of back when we did the listening session for the neighborhood plan.
Yeah.
And essentially our job was to just listen to feedback and not comment or make a judgment or anything like that. And that's the kind of thing I think you're talking about.
I think that would be a really powerful thing to do. Yeah. And somebody put in the chat about doing it, you know, not at occasional meetings. Yeah. Okay. Food for thought. Newsletter. So Susan has taken some initiative to think about the upcoming newsletter. She put forward a time frame, which is exactly what I would have said for in terms of how long it takes the printer to get it from press to people's mailboxes. And Charlie worked on that last time. I worked on that. And I think we need to call a working committee meeting to carry out those tasks. But in the meantime, what do you think should be the main theme or content of this newsletter that's going to everybody's mailbox in June? And should it be in June?
Well, I thought it had to be in June because there was a timeline that we had to hit a certain amount of money. There was a financial reason that John mentioned. I'm sorry, I can't remember the details,
No,
but I know we had to have it out by June.
We have to spend the money by June. So, and I don't think we have time to do it before June. So to me, June is when it's happening.
Charles?
Yeah, I remember Susan making, I thought, a good point of trying to get the newsletter to families before school is out, which happens
The
remind me
16th,
when- the
it's the
16th.
17th, it's that Friday of that week of
Right.
June.
And today I did talk with the printer and with Cindy just to get an idea of what kind of constraints we might have in terms of time and so on. And I sent Susan a kind of revised timeline on that. Claire, were you saying that you didn't think it could happen earlier than that? Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, I don't think we can get a newsletter out in May.
We did it in 6 days and
Well, no,
couple of
no,
months
the
ago.
printer needs 2 weeks.
that's
And
why
we should, yeah,
So I think
you have
Chelsea,
a timeline.
yeah.
And
yeah,
based on hard information. And I do think we could do it. It would be arriving at people's homes on June 13th and backing into that.
Well, we
Anyway.
could try and get it out a couple days before that, because that's when the meeting is.
What meeting?
Our general meeting, RRCO
Oh,
meeting.
okay. Well, okay, that's new information that would have to be worked into this, but I would say that it is possible to do it in that time frame.
May I
Uh-huh.
share my screen? I've got it up that you sent, Charles C. Can I share my
Okay,
screen so that I can show
sure.
everybody? Just then
Can
share
I,
my-
wait a minute, do we need to spend a lot of time on this schedule? Is that a committee?
Well,
uh,
the
working
reason
committee thing?
the reason we had it scheduled is that we were going to ask people to start bringing their ideas together so that we had basically the layout and so on before the next board meeting.
Well,
um,
the proposal was that we discussed that tonight, and that's what I thought we were going to be doing now.
Well, that's, okay,
That's
so
what
can
we're
I
trying
share
to
the
do.
document? I'm gonna share the document that was put together. Thank you, Charles C. for doing so. It's got a good timeline that I think makes sense, where we said today we were gonna brainstorm content. So unfortunately, because half the board is not here, we don't have content except for half of the group, so we can take feedback and then start developing a base draft. Within the next 2 weeks, we really start to need to get the ideas framed up now. So the people that are, doing the writing and or doing the editing and the layouts have time to get that work done and for the board to be able to review it. I think this timeline makes good sense given the current, given the schedule of printing. At least I thought it did. I wasn't aware. I don't know that the board meeting, I understand that we have a board meeting, but I don't know that it makes a difference since this is a printed vehicle that'll go out a month later.
Thank you for doing all this work. It's great. The only revision I would make on it is to move the dates up about 3 days, all down the whole process so that we can get it out in people's homes a couple days before the general meeting, which is on the 13th,
June 13th.
June 13th. Yeah.
We can
Okay,
try,
well-
but I mean, we've got to have content.
Well,
Right.
yeah, but we whipped it out last time. It's not a problem. She roll your eyes, Susan.
Well,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I mean, I don't want to whip some out. I mean, I want to deliver content that we think is going to be
Yes.
incredibly relevant.
So-
And I know
Yeah.
that we've had to whip things out in the past. And I think we're just trying to develop a more thoughtful, I mean, not more thoughtful, but just let's get us on a process that then we can have and everybody kind of get a system in place.
Why don't we take Claire's suggestion and try to rework this to see if we can accommodate that, which I imagine we can, but it isn't, what we're trying to avoid, just to repeat what Susan said, is being under a tremendous pressure. So we want to do this in a way that doesn't,
It's doable. Yeah.
yes, well, and comfortably doable.
Yeah.
But,
Can we start sharing ideas now and then come back? So at least we have something to go.
Yeah, I
off?
think what we need to do is share ideas and then we'll submit an email around, trying to, again, get some feedback in advance. Because
Yeah.
we have to get the content written before our next meeting.
Absolutely. Good
So
idea.
can we brainstorm some things that we would hope to do? I
Yeah.
have to tell you that the length of the newsletter, according to my conversation with, or my email exchange with Cindy, is, and this will dictate a lot, is that with the budget, I believe we have for this, 4 to 6 pages should be doable. Now, the last newsletter was, and by the pages, I mean sides of a page, 4. So the last newsletter was 4 sides. And that isn't a very long newsletter. If we were to expand it to 6 pages, it would give us more flexibility in terms of content. So I do think it's important if we could get some ideas to subjects that we feel are absolutely necessary.
To me, the main purpose of this mail newsletter is to reach the people who we don't reach with the email, right? And to recruit them to get into our system for regular contact, which is our mailing list. So that's the main advantage of this newsletter. So the content needs to be something that's going to encourage folks to want to sign up for the e-news and for the announcements for the meetings. Susan.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that we got to make very actionable content. And my concern is if we try to rush and, again, we're trying to just kind of chase to get things out there, we're not going to get a lot of content that feels very actionable. And when I say actionable, like we don't have a social media, site yet. We haven't figured that out. We haven't updated the website. We don't have a social, we're not going to be able to, promote Spanish language or anything. I worry a little bit that it might be a little cart before the horse because we're trying to race to get the newsletter out, which we absolutely need to do. And we're not questioning that. But we also want to make sure that it's got something in it that's meaty, that will excite people to get involved. And I don't know that we necessarily have all those things figured out just yet.
No,
Yeah.
that's what we're doing right now, right?
Right.
So I propose that we describe our exciting committees and cut, things that we're proud of that we've accomplished and what we're looking forward to accomplishing in those committees that are most active.
In the last newsletter, we did descriptions of the committees. Maybe this time we can focus on specific actions that are being worked on in certain committees and not necessarily list all the committees, but direct people to the website. That I think part of what we would want to do is start encouraging people to go to our website to get more information, because this newsletter won't be an exhaustive opportunity to talk about everything.
Carly?
I'd like to propose that we include a summary of upcoming community events that will be happening in, July, August, as we know them, the front porch concerts and some of the other community events, as well as an update on the Zippo laminator. The city again is going to have the work session on the 23rd. So I believe that we can share some news with the community by the 27th deadline. And I also think that we should activate a social media platform so we can share that with folks as well.
Okay, I think that we should have a mobilization, action mobilization around the neighborhood plan.
Yeah.
Which will be hopefully launching some kinds of something by then. I don't know what the story is, but it has to come back onto people's radar.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Do you think that it should also include something about the MX on River Road?
Yes.
So what I'm hearing is like events, news items about activities, and then there's the issues, neighborhood issues like MX and planning.
I would love for us to also put out there that we might not have the survey ready or canvassing ready, but I do think it's a good idea for us to start putting out there to people. We want to hear what you have to say. Stay tuned. We're going to be putting out a neighborhood survey. Let's get people excited about some of the things that we're going to be doing to ask them for feedback. Again, we won't necessarily have a date for that, but we can get them a general idea.
Yeah.
I agree. And I was going to suggest that if we can pick a time that we're going to have, a listening session or time for feedback for the board, we can perhaps advertise that in the newsletter.
Yeah, Joshua is asking about the outreach and communication committees, and yes, we're reformulating that to be more active along these lines. I thought it would be fun to maybe interview a new resident of the neighborhood about what is it that you'd like to know about the neighborhood, and just have it print an interview, as content.
Or a new business too, like
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
So I've written down a few things. I wrote down Zippo, events, neighborhood plan, EMX, an Iris Place update, social media, listening sessions, promoting future canvassing surveys, interviewing new residents, doing business highlights. Did I miss anything?
No,
I don't think so, but I just want to remind us that we also have a regular monthly newsletter. So this is not the end all be all of all outgoing communication.
I think it's just the matter of the scale, right? Because the email is the several hundred people that are active, but this goes to all of the people, right?
Mhm.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And this will be a lot of content for,
Yeah.
certainly for 4 pages, but maybe.
Yeah. We're gonna have to
We're gonna have to narrow it down.
narrow it down. Yeah. Yeah. And have just not just type, have pictures.
Are we gonna?
Like space,
we should
pictures.
We should have
Okay.
our mission on there too, right? Somewhere.
Yeah.
What was Misty, did you just say?
Oh, to have our mission printed somewhere, probably on the front page.
Yeah, if we have a mission statement, it can go up near the banner.
We're here. Oh.
Okay, so do we have any more to say on the newsletter discussion?
Are we doing this in a committee then?
We're doing this in a committee. We did form a committee at the retreat. Can I get a volunteer to organize the first meeting of the committee?
Yeah, I'll organize the first meeting, and basically it was the people on this call. I mean, it was Carly, Misty, Charles C., you, Claire, and myself that
Oh,
agreed to be
okay.
on the marketing committee. So
All right.
I'll be calling a meeting of ourselves again.
Committee.
I'll be calling another meeting.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Okay, May meeting. We have 2 requests for people who want to come talk to us. One is to come talk about the plans for the rebuilding of the North Eugene High School. And in the past, that's been, they come and they show us these blueprints and all this kind of stuff. And the other one is to come talk to us about the Howard Avenue redesign project. I put some notes in the background information about these. Are there any other topics that you think that we should have on, rather than just say, yes, this is the agenda, let's find out if there's other possibilities. Okay. So tentatively, those are the 2 agenda items.
When are elections? That's not until fall, right?
Well, there aren't any candidates that have opposition
Okay.
and that we're allowed to vote on.
Okay.
So, yeah, the election is on the 17th of May. Thank you, Carlene. Okay, so is this meeting suggesting that we're going to turn it over to John and I to plan the meeting for this 17th or the general meeting? Okay.
I guess so.
Okie dokie. Misty, now Misty went to the, do you want to just say what we should do about the big athletic thing?
Oh, well, I wanted to give, and this could go on our next, I could give a brief presentation to the community about what all is being planned. It will impact everyone, of course, but mostly in a fun way. If you work downtown, it's going to be quite chaotic, but there's a lot of fun family activities that are going on and a lot of involvement that businesses can participate in as well. And the city is looking at beautifying Eugene by way of banners and flower pots and all of that.
Getting rid of homeless people, that's always code. Beautifying the city is a code for getting rid of homeless people.
Yeah, they were a little bit like, yeah, we're gonna deal with the homeless folks like we always do. was
Susan,
not-
I see your hand.
Which was not funny. So
Yeah.
but yeah, that's what
I
their
guess-
attitude was.
The only question I have is I appreciate this event. I know it's huge. I'm going to be volunteering. It's part of the Master Recycler program. I'm all in. The city is already doing a massive push to make awareness. You know, it's been in the paper a million times. I've already gotten emails that I'm barely signed up for anything in the city, but boy, did they find me. You know, with all due respect, it's just not the most important thing for our neighborhood. And I'm going to always ask us to come back and focus on the things that are most important. And I would really rather us spend the time in the meetings, having it be about the stuff that is really going to impact us. And I think it's great to make everybody aware of it, but I just don't want to dedicate a ton of time because it feels duplicative to work that the city's already doing.
I kind of agree. I don't really see, the relevance to this neighborhood. We're not even in the city. But that's just my bias. Not excited about sporting events, period. But I just wanted to put it on the agenda so people could weigh in.
Yeah, I mean, it's just less work for me. If
Yeah.
y'all think that it's not important, then that's okay.
Does anybody
I
else
think
want to
it's
say
nice
anything?
I think it's nice to include it as, an awareness for events or, that folks might want to be in the know that that's happening. But I agree that we shouldn't commit a lot of our board time to it.
Great announcement. I mean, I think it's an announcement. It's
Yeah,
exactly an announcement. It's an actionable announcement.
yeah. But we're not going to go have our RRCO banner on a booth or anything like that, is what I'm hearing. I don't see why we would do that. So athletes from Japan can come visit our neighborhood. Okay, let's move on. Did you want to mention the zip report, Carly? Did you already do that?
She talked about it earlier.
She did, okay. And then we said at a retreat, we had delegated a couple people to plan our hybrid transition. And I just wanted to remind folks that that was the case. And to get on it.
Who was that?
Yeah,
It was in the minutes that I was looking at earlier today. And I don't know that I have them up anymore.
I don't think it's anybody that was on the call today.
I did volunteer to participate in that. And I believe it was to discuss whether we should move to hybrid, not to implement the hybrid meeting. Is that right?
I thought it
More of a
was
broader
kind of
discussion.
how would we do the logistics of it, and how would we decide when it's good to do, is what my understanding was.
Great.
yeah. My understanding was it was both. It was to talk about how we could pull that off and where we would get the right equipment to do it, but also verify that this is an essential thing for us to do or not.
Right. So anyway, that needs that, it would be good for us to have some announcement along those lines in the newsletter. You think?
Yeah,
Okay. That's all that's on our formal agenda.
Could I-
Except for,
never mind.
one thing we didn't do was approve the minutes. We kind of skimmed by that at the top of the meeting.
I thought they were in the consent calendar.
They are in the consent calendar, but I didn't enumerate that item when we passed the consent calendar. So have we now officially approved the minutes? Just to be clear. Okay.
I'm sorry, my internet died. I don't know what happened. I just got kicked off. I'm back.
Okay. I was just confirming that we had officially approved the minutes. Carlene asked if the general membership is going to be approving their own minutes. The answer is no. The charter says the board approves the general meeting minutes, and then something we need to be sure happens is that those minutes are available for the public. And as when we announce in general meetings, the actions of the board, someone can raise a question about that if they disagree with that approval. Is that clear as mud?
Well,
Okay.
so for instance, we just approved the last general meeting minutes. What
Yeah.
happens to them that people can get access to them? Are they posted on the website?
I don't know. I don't know. They're not. They're in the Google Drive, and what we have to, Joshua, do we have a place where we post a link to the minutes now? Is he still here? Maybe he's not here anymore.
There he is.
Okay.
So yeah, the way that we had it set up was that there's a folder on the G drive that's shared publicly, and so when the minutes before there's like you put them in the minutes folder when they're not approved, and then you put them in the I can't remember what we call it, probably published or something like that folder once they're approved. And we originally had a date scheme that had the year, then the month, and the day, so they would all line up perfectly in order for people, because we were having trouble with remembering to post them on the internet, regularly. So we just link to the folder, people can go and browse through and get the minutes. So that's kind of how we have it set up right now.
And just on that, John did a lot of work in organizing those folders, and there is now a more organized, approved, and draft minutes folders.
And that's good, because I know that
Yeah.
I think Dwight maybe wasn't keeping up with the
Yeah.
scheme
So
that
we're
we-
getting on top of that. So that's how it's done. And maybe what we should do is have announcements. I mean, have a notice in the newsletter that tells people that they can check out the minutes there. I think it's this hidden the secret, a public secret. Okay. Any other business anybody wants to bring to the table?
On April 30th, at Aubrey Park, there is going to be a wildflower celebration, and the Emergency Preparedness Committee, along with the emergency preparedness people in Bethel and Santa Clara, will have a booth. And it sounds like it's a fun celebration. I've never been to it, but there are kid activities and a lot of things having to do with nature. So just
Okay.
letting you know.
There's also, let's see. In our newsletter calendar, and I don't see it right now, there's the propagation fair at the rec center where you can get seed swap and plants and stuff. Joshua?
I just wanted to ask really quick, do you guys want me to participate in the marketing or outreach or whatever we're calling committee, at all? Or do you want to remake it and then see what, I don't know if I would be helpful to, as the sort of website or whatever.
I think it'd be wonderful,
Yeah,
Josh.
you're
I
drafting.
think it'd be
dude.
great.
Okay, then go ahead and invite me when you have the meeting.
I will do so. Josh, I don't think I have your email. If you'd be kind enough just to pop it in the chat for me,
Sure, yeah.
that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, then I suggest that we adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Does anybody, without objection? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Y'all
you.
Thanks, y'all. Take care.
Take care of
Great
yourself.
night.
Bye-bye.